So thanks for joining. My name is Didier. I'm the tech lead for the HPE developer community. And this is the November meetup. And this month we have Roma Pavan talking about automated continuous deployment of container-based application using PCE. And we have in the background as well a member from the dev community, Denis, and also Sonu and Suresh answering question in the Q&A. So feel free to ask questions. Before we get started with the real content, I wanted to go through a few things, a few items about the developer community. First of all, we run those meetups every month, and thanks for joining. We have a good crowd of people following those, so thanks a lot. We don't have a meetup in December. We will resume meetups in January, but I don't have yet a confirmation of a title for the session. But what you find in those meetups is more in-depth on technology, open source, dev topics, and more from HPE and from some of our partners. We have another, and you can find the details about the upcoming sessions and the replay on our YouTube channel for the past session on the page that we highlight on here. And my colleague Denis will put the links in the Q&A for you to cut and paste. So you can check on the meetups page. You'll find all the replay for the sessions and the slides. We also have another type of sessions called the Munch and Learn, which are a little more thought leadership and vendor and product agnostic. Also not always, because the session in December will be about the GreenLake API or the GreenLake platform APIs, and we'll have a session from Pallavi going through the API through a number of use cases. So that will be the only session we do in December, and then after that there will be a break for the holiday. So December 13, you can. The link is not yet up for registering there, but it'll be on the Munch and Learn page in the next 2 days. So we'll start promoting this. When we also have other interesting topics that you can use for learning new technology, and one in particular that I'd like to highlight called the workshops on demand. And we have a catalog of workshops that you can access here on the network, accessible 24/7 and available to anyone for free over the internet. And what this is a catalog of 33 workshops as of today, and 34 because we just introduced a new one on Podman. And you can use these workshops to learn something new, and we use a Jupyter Notebook experience to deliver those trainings. And you can find things on open source technologies such as Docker or Kubernetes, but also Podman, as Frederick introduced the new one last week, I think. But you can also find things about Redfish and programming ILO and OneView and those kind of HPE products. So give it a try, provide us with feedback. It's a great way to learn new things. Also, this is a community, so we need community members to help amplify and contribute. So if you, we'll ask you to continue to join our talks, and you can also forward the invitation to folks you think would be interested by the topic. Feel free to invite. Again, this is open to anyone, students, colleagues, customers, partners. We have a newsletter that we send at the beginning of every month. You can sign up for that, and it's just a great way to not miss any events that we run. We have a dedicated Slack where people can ask questions and engage in conversations, so feel free to join that Slack. We have lots of channels for the different topics across HPE, and you can ask your developer questions on how to do things and get a response from the community. We have a Twitter account, or X account, I should say now, and you can also subscribe to that. Now, if you're an SME and you'd like to get involved a little more, you can contribute a blog, and we have an easy way to produce blogs. We use an open source. We use Markdown. We use GitHub, so it's pretty easy. And we have a guide that explains how to write a blog. and it's all described in this contribute page. You can reach out to us if you are a subject matter expert and you'd like to deliver one of these meetup or participate in an event such as Discover, or where we have this ACSHAC representation. And finally, if you think there is a gap in our workshop catalog and you're an expert about this gap, then feel free to reach out and we can work together in adding a new workshop in the catalog about that topic. So that's kind of the different front where you can help and contribute. These are the links that you can use to find us, whether it's mail or the newsletter, the Slack, the internal Slack, if you're within HPE, or the Yammer group for the partners, and the direct link to the workshops on demand. And with that, let's get started with the real content of the session, and we'll turn over to Ruma for the intro, and then Pavan. Thank you very much.
My name is Ruma Nandi. I'm product manager for the developer experience capabilities that we are offering on private cloud enterprise. That's GreenLake for private cloud enterprise. With me, we have the SMEs, Pavan and Sonu and Suresh. Pavan is going to do the demo and give you all a technical overview of the architecture that is hosting the DevOps capabilities. And I'm going to start with little bit of why we have these capabilities and why we are building the developer experience capabilities on private cloud enterprise. So with that, Pavan, if I can request you to go to the next slide. So what's happening with the enterprises? Enterprises are trying to provide their developers the best experience to innovate and create applications in a very flexible and consistent manner so that they can bring new products and features and services to market as quickly as the business demands, right? And then enterprises can reinvest more into other value-added features and products. What are the challenges that the developers are facing? Developers, there is this all automated and repeatable development and deployment experience, and they want to use self-serve access to the required cloud resources as much as possible and deploy applications with minimal touch points, right? So developers want to maximize the benefits of cloud via the DevOps practice by continuously developing, testing, and deploying the applications in a more rapid and agile manner. And they also want to focus on their application development that would actually result into business outcomes instead of going through the overhead of deploying applications every time whenever there is a change in their development, right? So they would like to get rid of the overhead that involves a lot of repeatable and automated steps. So how is PCE, Private Cloud Enterprise, making a difference here? PCE is bringing the cloud experience to where the applications and the data reside in your colo, in your on-site premises or colo, right? That is one single place with role-based access for managing your infra resources, all integrated with GreenLake identity and access management. That's what PCE is doing for you. So that way, PCE is enabling the organizations to achieve high efficiency in their development, IT management, and enabling or allowing their employees to programmatically provision and configure their infrastructure resources, right? So with that, I would like to give you a holistic view of PCE. And Pavan, if you can go to the next slide. So this gives you more like a holistic view of PCE, what is private cloud enterprise and the services that are available on private cloud enterprise, virtual machine, container, bare metal. And then on top of that, what we are delivering is a set of developer experience capabilities. And the topic that we are going to talk today is the DevOps continuous deployment. As you see, We also have Cloud Shell, which is an interactive browser-based shell, preloaded and pre-packaged with a lot of libraries and blueprints. And that's something Pawan is going to talk more into details and give you all a demo. We also have APIs so that the developers can access or provision or do everything that they can do on the UI, but in a more programmatic manner. And then lastly, I want to just talk about, we also have IAC using Terraform, and Cloud Synthesis is a new capability that, that provides a framework for developers to use IAC via Terraform, via the GreenLake Terraform provider. So this kind of gives a holistic view of what are the developer experience aspects that are available on PCE and that are going to be coming up in future. So with that, I want to go to the next slide, Pawan. This slide gives you, more like a journey for users. So the developers coming from enterprises where they have their own CI tooling and they have done the development, they have done their testing, and they are looking at bringing their own applications and using this journey, using this framework to be able to quickly deploy onto their container environments on PCE. So this is the flow that Pawan is going to present and demo. So user comes in with their own CI tooling, gets onto the to the PCE and creates a project. Project is more like a space that allows the admins or the DevOps team to onboard, to provision and inherit the resources through certain roles, and then use those projects to go through these flows, create continuous deployment pipelines, and then also to begin with, they have to also connect or integrate with their CI, the external CI source from where they bring in the applications, and then create the pipelines, and then also create some automatic triggers for the deployments, for the CD deployments. So that's something that we are going to see more in more details in the demo. What I want to highlight is that recently we were also able to enhance the capability to be able to deploy onto multi-clusters, right? And that's something I'm sure is very valuable for enterprises. And we would also like to integrate with more CI sources. Currently, we only have GitHub as the only source that we support. And yeah, so that's pretty much about the journey that a developer would experience on private cloud enterprise for using the DevOps continuous deployment flow on PCE. So with that, I'm going to hand over to Pawan into more, who is going to take you to more details and the demos. Thank you.
Sure. Thanks, Roma. Hey, good morning, good evening, everyone. Before I get started, quick intro on myself. Myself, Pawan. I am the engineering lead in HPE GreenLake Private Cloud. I'm currently focusing on the developer-centric features and functionalities like DevOps and Cloud Shell. Yeah, so why DevOps and GreenLake? So what was the motivation for us to build this DevOps and Cloud Shell and PCE in particular? So for, keeping developer focus in mind, what are the typical day of a developer? How can developer interact with PC and deploy applications? So from developer point of view, essentially it is how we can easily enable developers to bring in the required functionality of CI/CD to deploy applications faster in a continuous fashion, right? So as Uma mentioned earlier, the bulk of the focus of developer is to keep churning applications, deploying developing the applications, deploying it, testing, and releasing it faster. And one of the key way to enable these while having a proper CI/CD infrastructure tooling in place, right? So with and kind of building these CI/CD infrastructure can typically take months, having the right set of tooling available, right? So and having an out of the box solution or framework where the developers can integrate their applications and deploy it, that will definitely enable developers to build, test, and release the applications faster, and not really worrying about creating the having the right pipelines in place, worrying about setting up the right CD tooling, worrying about setting up the right triggers to deploy the applications faster. So all these, if can be taken care and provided as a framework out of the box, and straight away can integrate to some of the well-known CI sources, that will definitely enable developers, to build the applications and test it and release it in a much faster cadence. And also with the Cloud Shell, right? Another important aspect is one, deploying the applications onto the the PCE clusters, and at the same time accessing those resources quickly and validating those, right? From in the comfort of any place, from the browser itself, not necessarily have to be connected to a specific VPN or anything. As long as I have a laptop and I have an internet access, if I can deploy the application and log in to my log into the GreenLake console and access the resources what I want to quickly validate. That's another important functionality is as part of the developer in application development life cycle, right? That will help a long way to for the developers to build and test and deploy the application. So these are all the motivations for us to kind of bring in these functionalities as initial version in PCE. So before I go on to the demo, a quick technical overview of how this is being built. So essentially, we are kind of assembling a well-known open source components which will help us in the CI/CD journey. So we have been using this component called Argo CD. It's a well-known CNCF of a project which for the application lifecycle management, and along with that, we are using something called Open Cluster Management. This is essentially for multi-cluster support, right? Where you can have a centralized management capabilities for managing multiple clusters. So we use the Open Cluster Management and combination of Argo CD, and we are planning to use Tecton as well to one, provide a true pipeline stage, multi-stage functionalities in a pipeline. Today we support the CD part alone, but at some point we would look at having multiple stages, for example, validation at some point, and then deployment, and then post-deployment validation. So these are all the things we are looking at. But at this point, these are all the tools what we use. Essentially, it's a combination of some of these well-known, so which can provide this the experience of CD pipelines. And then at this point, so the way it works is, so we have this briefly before I go to the demo. So we have this CI/CD pipelines in GreenLake UI, which I'll show in demo, which user can log in and then configure a particular cluster. So you can see in the below, the top layer is what we are seeing in the is a SaaS platform, where in the GreenLake central platform, and the one below is the private cloud rack, where the actual solution will be running. That's just where all the private cloud managed clusters will be there, where the applications will eventually get deployed. And then with the help of, we kind of stage and deploy the applications across multiple clusters. So there'll be an agent running on each clusters which can which can keep scanning for any updates to the application, and then pull the application definition, which Argo CD can use, and then deploy the applications. So this is the high level how this whole functionality works. As Uma mentioned, we currently support GitHub. So you can see there is a automatically connect to GitHub sources and then pull the required artifact to deploy the applications. Okay, moving on. So I'll start with the demo. So I'll go use case by use case what we're trying to solve. Maybe I'll switch between the slide and the demo as well, and then we can kind of correlate to what these use cases are and how it is actually be solved in the DevOps. So first one is, as a developer, I have my application which I've been developing and committing in GitHub. One is how I can. So before that, so we have there's a team which is working on a specific project, right? So I need to collaborate between the team, and I had to bring in all the team members and kind of provide a space where I can say that these are all the repositories which constitute the project, and then have these developers collaborate and contribute to this specific project. So we bring in this concept of a DevOps project, where the DevOps admin persona can create and assign the developers or the users who will be part of the project. So there are two main roles in that: an admin and a contributor role. An admin is more like a DevOps admin role, where they will be allowed to create pipelines, modify the pipelines, select the target where the applications has to get deployed, and contributor or mostly the developers, where they will be mostly interested in developing the application, committing the code, see their applications getting deployed via the pipelines onto the configured cluster, right? So we'll see this first use case where we create a project, configure a GitHub account, and then create a pipeline and see the initial deployment of the application. So I'll switch to the GreenLake central slide. So once you log in to the GreenLake dashboard, so there'll be this PC widget. Once you log in, we have this. Yeah, so we have this DevOps option in the widget. As I mentioned, we have this concept of a project. So we'll start with creating a project, which essentially is a space for a set of developers to collaborate on a project. So I'll show create a demo project, and I can provide access. As I was saying, right, we can add contributors or administrators to this project. By default, the creator is an administrator, but he or she can assign multiple users as administrators and add a number of users as contributors. So I'll create a project first. Yeah, so once the project is created, so next step would be to add or kind of associate an external account. In this case, we have external account is the source of the application artifacts. Today we support GitHub. And there are plans to support others as well, which we'll cover in the upcoming slides. So I have this. Just a minute. So I have this. I have a GitHub account. So I'll add this GitHub account as the external account. So just quickly add it here, and I need to provide the token. Let me just stop sharing for a while till when I copy the account. Okay, yeah. So I'm kind of adding the account where all the projects are residing, all the application source or artifacts are residing. So once I add the account, it will go and validate. Essentially, it goes and configures. Once it validates the required permissions are available, and then it also go and configures a webhook for automatic triggers. So this is going to take a few seconds for all the validation and the configuration that needs to happen. Yeah, so you can see it shows the status. If there's an issue, it'll actually fail at the right, immediately saying there is an issue with an account or token. So once we have the external account added, the next step would be to create a pipeline and deploy an application. So in this case, I have my GitHub account here, and I have a few repositories. I'll pick a repository called DevOps examples. I have a couple of my application artifacts. I have a Swagger UI Helm chart available, and today we support Helm chart. In particular, we support Helm charts as the factor, the form factor how the applications will be. So I have a Swagger application here. So I'll create a pipeline to deploy this application, and I also configure the trigger of what frequency it has to deploy. Right. So for that, we go and create a pipeline. So I'll give a name for it. It's Swagger application. Then I choose the GitHub account what was created. Select a specific repository. In this case, it's the DevOps examples. And then I select which branch. So this is where I'm saying that you kind of deploy the application as and when there is a PR merge to your branch. I'll demo in detail how this is done. And there's other option where I can see that you deploy it only on a specific release. So if there's a new release available, then deploy it rather than any PR merge. So both the options are available. And then I'll say the Helm chart path. So in this case, it's Swagger Helm. So this is the path where my Helm chart is located under Swagger Helm. Yeah, so I'll select which side my clusters are located, and I'll pick where to deploy this application. So I have 3 clusters configured. I'll pick a couple of clusters. Okay, and I'll say review. Okay, before that, so I'd like to open Cloud Shell and show. Just a minute. So okay, let me just create this pipeline. So yeah. So I'll open this Cloud Shell icon. So this is where I can log into the shell and directly interact with my clusters using kubectl commands, right? So as a developer, I can just log in here, view these pipelines, and then immediately see how are my clusters doing. So I'll just open another tab to open the container page. Yeah. So these are all the clusters I have. If you have seen, I have configured these two XML-based clusters, these two rather, for my pipeline. So I'll pick, so I'll download the kubeconfig and I'll interact through the Cloud Shell. I'll see how my applications are deployed. Copy this kubeconfig. So this is my shell. Shell is opened here. So I'll just clear. I think I have it already. Old one, yeah. This is one of the cluster. I'll copy paste the kubeconfig. Yeah. Let's export this kubeconfig. So let's say kubectl get pods. As you can see, the application is doing what we deployed, right? So you can see it's just a few seconds ago it got deployed. And if we see the application here, I configured the number of replicas as 2. So that's the number of replicas we are saying, right? And I configured for 2 clusters. So let me open another cluster as well. So you can see in the Cloud Shell, I can open multiple sessions. We allow up to 3 sessions. So I'll go back and copy the kube config for the other cluster, which was this. Here. Paste the kube config. Yeah. Yep, you can see it's deployed in this cluster as well. So it's few simple clicks. I've configured a pipeline which can now continuously listen on the specific repository for any changes, and it will start deploying, right? So and then as a developer, they can come in, log into the Cloud Shell and see how the application is. They can debug or see any specific statistics or metrics. They can all do within this Cloud Shell, right? So this is the use case 1. And going back to the presentation, so the second use case is we recently added functionality where we can customize the configuration of an application. So typically, any application will have the configuration of an application, right? It depends on what kind of environment it's being provisioned or deployed. For example, in development environment, I might need the CPU resources. I may not need, I may not need higher resources, or I may not need more replicas because I'm doing a development testing there and see how the application is doing, if my APIs are working. But in production, probably I'll need to have to configure multiple replicas and maybe multiple resources depending on the kind of traffic it will handle, right? So, and some of the other configuration parameters, right? For example, the URLs of some of the external entities what it interacts with might vary depending on the environment it is running, right? So there should be an ability for customer to or developer to override or configure those values in the pipeline itself, and have it uniquely configure for each environment, right? And so in this case, I've configured it for 2 clusters. So if I can go back and say, so in this case, I have the application running, and there are 2 replicas running, right? So let me do one thing. So I'll go and edit this pipeline and say that maybe I'll consider one of them as a dev environment, other one as a production environment, and I'll scale down one of the environment. I'll scale down the replica to 1, and the one I'll increase it to 3. So if I edit the pipeline, yeah, so I have these 2 targets. So maybe this one I'll say I'll reduce it to 1, and the next one I'll increase the replicas to 3 rather. Yeah. So it will automatically detect all the possible overrides that we can set based on definition of the Helm charts. So I'll have this deployment replica. This one currently it is 2, and I'm reducing it to 1. And then for this one, I'll increase to 3. Sorry. Yeah, so you can see there are 2 substitutions I made. One is for this one, I made the replica count as 1, and for the second one, I made replica count as 3. So I'll review this pipeline, I'll update it. So we should see in few seconds the corresponding changes being taken. Yeah, so the pipeline is in progress. Let me go back to my Cloud Shell. So this is the one which I think I increased the replica count to 3, and the other one I reduced it to 2. So if I see here in few, let me just clear my screen again. Yeah, as you can see, it's one of them 3 seconds ago, the replica increased to 3. And if I go to the other tab, here I reduce it to 1. As you can see, one of them got removed, and then so this way developers can kind of depending on where they're deploying the application, they can customize the parameters on what application needs, and then accordingly configure for each environment. So this is the one other use case. I'll switch back to my slide. So the other one is on the continuous fashion, right? So as a developer, they would like to see their application as and when they develop and commit the code and have the CI process run and generate the required artifacts. They would like to see those deployed to the cluster immediately rather than going through some of the series of other manual steps, right? So with the pipeline creation, as I mentioned earlier, we'll configure the webhooks on GitHub to automatically push the events, and depending on the trigger that's configured, the required artifacts are pulled on the event, and then it will be deployed onto the application. So so let me change it here. So I'll do one thing. I'll go back here and then change the replica back to 2 for both. Yeah. So I'll remove this substitution. Maybe I'll make it as, yeah. Let's see these coming back to 2 again. Yeah, this is scaled up to 2, and this should be scaled down to 2 as well. In a few minutes. Yeah, just scaled up to 2. It is taking some time, I think. But anyway, when this is running, what specifically I want to demo was, I'll go back here and I'll so this is the use case where I'll make some changes. Developer makes some change to the application. They commit the changes, and immediately they want to, and the CI process kicks in. It'll generate the required artifacts, and then we want to deploy the artifacts automatically onto the cluster, right? So in this case, as we mentioned, we support GitHub at this point, and we assume we kind of even GitHub will act as the application artifactory. So going forward, we have plans to integrate with others as well, but at this point, it's GitHub. So what I'll do is I'll edit this pipeline, and maybe I'll change the replica count to 4, so that it should be scaled up to 4 in both the clusters automatically, right? So I'll update this to 4. I'll commit this file. See, replica increased to 4. Okay, so once it's committed, automatically the GitHub will send an event, and we kind of pull the latest artifact changes and then deploy it. So if I go to the other cluster, you can see, yeah. So you can see that these two got deployed now. As soon as I committed the code, you can see it's scaled up to 4 here. Let's check my other cluster. Even this got scaled up to 4. You can see one of them got deployed now. So this is other key use case, right, from developer point of view. So developers can now focus on committing the code, not really worrying about how to deploy it to the clusters. Automatically, everything is taken care. They can immediately log into the Cloud Shell and see the new version of applications being running there. Do the required debugging or collecting the required metrics, and then do the release of the application. So these are the primary use cases which we want to demo. And the fourth one, which we have been demoing along, is the Cloud Shell, right? So the Cloud Shell will enable developers to access the resources from anywhere in the comfort of a browser, right? As long as the developers have access to the internet and have a browser, they can easily interact with the resources or the target clusters in this case, and run the kubectl commands and then get the required information. And also, this Cloud Shell can act as a workspace, not just a session for interaction, because we bundle a lot of other toolings like popular language tools like Python, Java, Go, and then other tooling like Ansible, and then the Terraforms modules for GreenLake itself, and Helm charts, right? So a lot of these developer-centric tools are all pre-packaged into this shell, and they can actually maintain this as a sandbox. And the data is persisted up to 1 GB. The data is persisted, so they can close. If they log off GreenLake and come back again, the data will be available back once the Cloud Shell is logged in again. So this whole shell will, along with one giving access to the resources, will also can act as a workspace for developers to develop their application. So that's pretty much what I wanted to share on DevOps for private cloud enterprise in GreenLake. I'll be happy to take questions. Okay, so so what we have been developing so far is the support for GitHub. So we have kind of limited support in terms of integrating with GitHub and the kind of deployment mechanism we do. So going forward, we are looking at providing additional standard mechanism deployment patterns like Canary or AV or Blue Green mechanisms. So automatically, user can go and configure the way they want to deploy it onto the clusters, be it Canary based or Blue Green. And also the progressive deployment, right, where they say there are 100 clusters and they want to progressively roll out the applications in batches, maybe in batches of 5 you roll out, and if successful, then roll out to the remaining batches. That's the progressive rollout mechanism which we are looking at developing in the DevOps space. And also the affinity for the placement of the applications, right? The hybrid cloud cases where they have a GreenLake managed GreenLake HPE GreenLake cloud based on ERE Esmeralda, and there is EKSA or OpenShift cloud. And what is the right placement for my application, right? So for setting the right placement and affinities, and then support for additional distros. Today we support ERE, but we are looking at supporting Red Hat OpenShift, EKSA, and RKE, and eventually any Kubernetes cluster customers can bring in, right? So these are the other things what we're looking at. And as I mentioned, the CI tooling today, the Artifactory store in particular, we support GitHub. But we are looking at extending that to Jenkins or JFrog or even Docker Hub, because we believe that customers will have various CI tooling, and then the way the Artifactory store could be Jenkins Artifactory or JFrog Artifactories, or even some of the images could be in Docker Hub. So we would like to extend the support of integrating these as well, and also the release management. So mainly around how do we compose multiple. Today I can deploy an application, but for a project release, I would like to compose a release by grouping multiple application or different versions, and then deploy the release together in a pipeline, right? So how do we manage these releases? How do we version these releases across different repositories? So that's another thing which we are looking at supporting. So these are all things which we are planning. We have in the plan, and would like to add these as part of the HPE DevOps functionality.
We have some questions in the Q&A. Maybe you can take them live. Maybe, Pavan?
Sure. Yeah. So that was going through the questions. The first one, Nagarjun is asking, can deployment take into account the result of test and then decide? So this is one of the forward-looking things which we are looking at, Nagarjun. One is developing a different stages of deployment. So today it's a simple deployment that we are helm charts that we're doing, but at this point, some point we would like to look at building the stages. Maybe run set of tests to begin with, right? And only if test succeeds, that's when we actually want to deploy it. So that is something which we are looking at this point. It doesn't take into account any test, but that's something which we are looking at building in the future. Sonny, would like to add anything? I know I see you typing as well.
And thanks, Pawan. And that's exactly what the progressive delivery as part of continuous deployment is all about. So we would extract the application liveness and health status, and then decide to roll out the upgrade to other clusters or to other namespaces, for example. So that's exactly what we would do. And as Pawan was mentioning in the forward-looking features, this is something that we are actively working on.
Thanks, Son.
Right.
I see anonymous ask a question on, can we get access to the portal for practice? I think that's something which maybe, Ruma, that's something you would like to take that maybe through a trials or a thing they can come in.
Yeah, through trials, you can come in and try the DevOps capabilities. At this point, DevOps continuous deployment is in beta state, available for PC customers currently who are PC customers. But we are going and set up a trial environment as well.
We have a question on secret.
Yeah. So yeah, how do we handle secret? So the configuration management is other thing which we are looking at. So as you see, we do allow developers to configure the the non-secret, if I can say it right. But for the secret management itself, we are looking at bringing in. I know I did not show that in the forward-looking statement, but we are looking at bringing in Vault, HashiCorp Vault, integrated with Vault, and let user have a mechanism to store those secrets in Vault and have those deployed and then configure it for the application. So that's again is something which we are looking at this point. Yeah, it's only the text, the configuration which they can configure it in plain text mostly, and not really the secret. Yeah, but at some point we are looking at having secret management as well, and that will be via the Vault. So when there's another question on when this will be available to the customer. So as Ruva mentioned, this is already available in beta. I think it's soon. We're looking at kind of making it available. As a company. So Ruma is something which you can kind of take this. So there's a question on when this will be available to the customers.
When will the DevOps capability be available to the customers?
That's
Is
correct.
that the it
That's
is
right.
available today in beta state. So when customer onboards to private cloud enterprise PCE, customer can request to get access to the DevOps capability through a service request, and that's when the customer's roles will be assigned, and the developers in customer organization should be able to see the DevOps with a beta tag on the PC dashboard. So if you have seen the demo that Pawan was presenting, as soon as you get enabled through the service request, you should be able to use it on PC. Does that answer the question?
I think it does. We have a last question from Josie. Josie, maybe Pavan, you can take that one. Oops, oh, it's been answered maybe.
Oops, yeah.
Okay,
I
I can rephrase that question. The question was, from the container, the pod or the containers that we deploy using DevOps, from within the container, can we make a call back into the DevOps service to check for any new updates of an application, right? So my answer to that question was, that's a very interesting use case, right? So the answer is, all the features that Pawan showed is also available through the APIs. So if you generate an appropriate API client and associated secret, you can embed them as part of your pod, and the pod can now start making the DevOps API calls to retrieve the information, to decide to do whatever you want to do. Maybe check for updates, right? So things like that can be done in that fashion. But this is a very interesting question. Thanks for that.
Maybe it's a good time, since we don't have any question, because there's one question, but I don't understand it, which is kind of a bash command. But let's take a look at the poll. I'll end the poll and I'll share the results, okay? If you want to comment, or is it what you expected, the team?
Yeah, the poll results are very interesting and
Okay.
useful for us. Definitely would help shape the roadmap for the DevOps capability on private cloud. Yeah, I really want to thank everyone who participated in the poll.
Okay, perfect. So I will stop that poll and maybe start the end of poll session, which is very quick before people drop. And if you don't have any other remark or any questions that needs to be answered, I would ask attendees to answer the end of session poll and before they leave, so we get some feedback about the program itself. And then I would like to thank the team for being here today and doing the demo and the session on the topic of the day. Thanks a lot, everyone, for joining. I will leave the poll another minute or so. And I thank you, everyone, for joining, and the team for contributing content. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.